Welcome to Casense.
If you've shopped for clothes recently, you've probably noticed a lot of green labels. Everywhere you look, brands are making big promises about being eco-friendly or reaching net zero. But it can be hard to know what those tags actually mean. Are these companies taking real action to cut their pollution, or are they just using these promises as vanity badges to make us feel better at the register? If we want to help protect the climate, we have to be able to tell the difference between clever marketing and a genuine reduction in a company's footprint. Let's imagine a clothing brand called Threadline. The people running it genuinely want to eliminate their carbon footprint and do right by the planet. But they run into an immediate problem. Before you can cut your carbon pollution, you have to find exactly where it is hiding. This process is what experts call carbon accounting. And to do it accurately, Threadline has to look far beyond the walls of their own offices to see where their pollution actually comes from. This map shows Threadline's day-to-day operations. Here's their corporate headquarters and the fleet of vans used for deliveries. When Threadline burns fuel in these vans or gas in their boilers, that's Scope 1. It's the pollution created directly from things they own. As the pie chart shows, direct emissions represent a surprisingly tiny fraction of their total impact. So we zoom out. Threadline also has retail stores. They don't generate power on site, but buy it from the grid to keep the lights and air conditioning running. This is Scope 2, the indirect pollution created at a distant power plant to make the electricity the company buys and uses. It's easy for a business to track these first two categories. They just look at their own fuel receipts and monthly utility bills to do the math. But if Threadline stops measuring here, they leave out the vast majority of their impact, because Scopes 1 and 2 only account for the small slice the company physically touches. To find the rest, we have to look across the globe. We need to track where Threadline's raw materials are grown, how the fabric is processed, and the shipping routes used to move products to customers. Indirect emissions happening up and down that global supply chain are what we call Scope 3. This is where the scale of the problem becomes clear. For most companies, these indirect activities represent over 80% of their total footprint. Because this global web is complex and takes effort to track down, some companies ignore it. They report only on their offices and stores, leaving out the massive amount of carbon it took to actually make their products. But that hides reality. A company isn't truly green if it ignores the pollution from the ships and factories that keep it in business. We also have to be careful not to count the same carbon twice. The fuel a shipping partner burns is their Scope 1, but it's Threadline's Scope 3. It's also important to remember that buying carbon offsets, like paying to plant trees, isn't a substitute for the hard work of physically cutting the exhaust coming from those ships and mills. A company can't reach net zero by only fixing its own backyard, while the rest of its supply chain continues to pollute at the same rate. If Scope 3 is so big and so difficult to measure, who makes sure these companies are actually telling the truth? That's the role of the Science-Based Targets Initiative, or SBTi. Think of them as an independent referee for climate goals. The SBTi checks a company's plans to make sure they align with what the latest climate science says is necessary to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Their rules are strict. If Scope 3 makes up more than 40% of a company's footprint, which it almost always does, that company is required to set clear, ambitious targets to reduce those supply chain emissions. This independent check turns a vague marketing promise into a credible commitment, requiring the company to reduce its real-world emissions by about 90% by the year 2050. Which brings us back to the items in your hands. The next time you see a brand claiming to be net zero, you now know the two things to look for. Are they accounting for all three scopes of their footprint? And are those targets validated by the SBTi? You can only cut what you actually measure, and reaching real net zero requires looking at the entire journey of a product, from the very first seed to the finished garment.